I have interviewed two supermodels, legitimate supermodels, who were not beautiful enough. A couple of years ago, Margot Robbie was trolled for not being beautiful enough. The reality is, no one is beautiful enough. One of the reasons girls, and boys too, but this is particularly true for girls, grow up insecure is in so many different ways we teach them that other people's opinions of them and external measures like beauty define their worth in the world. Adult women were buying Raising Girls Who Like Themselves for themselves because it explained to them why they grew up with this deep sense of inadequacy. And if people get one thing out of this episode, I hope that it is this, because it will absolutely change your daughter's life.
Kasey Edwards, welcome to the podcast.
Blake, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It is great to have you here. I only came across your work recently. I was looking for kind of experts in the parenting space. As you are now aware, I'm very new to this space, very green. And your name came up and I saw one of your books straight away, Raise My Daughter to Like Herself. And I was like, oh my God, this is the person I need to speak to. So I've also seen that you've got a new book out, and we'll see how we kind of tie that into this conversation. But before we get started, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm a researcher and a writer. I've written 10 books. I've been around for a while. I've been read by 10 million people around the world. But I'm most well known for my parenting books. And I co-write with my husband, Dr. Christopher Scanlon. And so we wrote Raising Girls Who Like Themselves because we were the parents of girls. And it was a 10-year research project for us. We wanted to find out how to be the best parents that we could be. And then so we put that into a book, and then it came out and people said, well, what about boys? Shouldn't boys like themselves too? And so then being researchers, we don't have boys, but we focused on research. We emailed 15,000 parents for that book. And we wrote Bringing Up Boys Who Like Themselves. And then it came to light that adult women were buying Raising Girls Who Like Themselves for themselves because it explained to them why they grew up with this deep sense of inadequacy and the beliefs that they were taught as girls that they didn't even know that they had, that was stopping them from living the authentic lives that they wanted to live. And so then I wrote my recent book that's come out this year, Goodbye Good Girl, Hello Me, which is my own personal journey, backed by research, of learning to like myself as an adult woman.
I'm looking forward to speaking on that topic as well. I need to start with a question that my partner Shani and I have been sitting with for probably 4 or 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat with it, and then I got introduced to your work and I was like, oh my God, I think Kasey's the person to answer this question.
It's me up.
So we decided probably 4 or 5 weeks ago that, or we questioned, are we telling our daughter's name's Frankie, too much or too often that she's beautiful? Because I reckon both of us would probably tell her she's beautiful 2,500 times a day. And we're like, maybe we could get a little bit more diverse in what we're encouraging. Is there such thing as too much? And should we have more diversity in talking to our daughter around her traits as such?
Yeah. Yes. And let me explain why. And this is really controversial, and particularly for dads, because dads feel like it's their job to tell their girl that she's beautiful. I would like to challenge that today. And if people get one thing out of this episode, I hope that it is this, because it will absolutely change your daughter's life. Okay? Your daughter, unless you intervene, will receive more comments about her beauty and her appearance than everything else combined about her, which means that she will naturally grow up believing that her beauty and her appearance defines her worth. That is what everybody cares about. That's what makes her a worthwhile person. And then she will go out into a world where she will never be beautiful enough. And that is true for everyone, Blake. I know your daughter is the most beautiful daughter in the whole world,
She
right?
is. No
Yes,
one compares to my daughter.
exactly.
She's the
Right.
most.
But I have interviewed two supermodels, legitimate supermodels, who were not beautiful enough.
Mm,
A couple of years ago, Margot Robbie was trolled for not being beautiful enough. The reality is, no one is beautiful enough. So when you teach your girl that her worth is defined by her beauty, and then send her out into a world where she can't be beautiful enough, she will, by definition, be insecure.
mm.
And that will affect her whole life. So we found women who have really sturdy body images. There's not many of them around, right? Because most of us were raised with that idea that if you tell your daughter over and over again that she's beautiful, one day she'll believe it and she'll have high self-esteem. Now, that was done to our generation. Parents are doing it to their kids now, and it did not work, right? But we found women who had sturdy body images, and they all had one thing in common:
What's that word? What body image?
body image.
What was the word used before body image?
Sturdy. A sturdy body image. And what I
Sturdy.
sturdy. So what I mean by that is they're not affected, their day is not affected by the number on the scales.
I've never heard
They,
that word. That's so interesting.
it means that it doesn't matter, how
Yeah.
whether their jeans are tight. They're still
Mm,
going to have a good day. They're
mm,
still going to feel like a good person.
mm.
Um, and the thing that all of those women had in common is two things. They grew up in families that did not care about beauty. And what did their families care about? Effort and things that they could control. So, beauty is an external measure, right? It's something that someone bestows on you, and it's something that people take away from you. Whereas if you care about whether your daughter tries, whether or not she's a kind person, whether or not she's funny, whether or not she's just awesome to be around, that's something that she can control. So that empowers her rather than disempowers her. And fathers have a massive, massive impact on a girl's body image. If you want to hang out with your daughter just because she's awesome, and do things with her because she's a person and not because she's a pretty doll, you will absolutely change her life.
I'm getting emotional, and we haven't even really started yet.
Yes. So I want to say it doesn't mean that you don't ever tell your daughter that she's beautiful,
Mm.
right? So the way that my husband and I have treated beauty is it's just a fact. Our girls are beautiful. Like it's such a fact, we barely even need to say it. But they also know that all the things we love and value about them, beauty's not even on the list. We just don't care about it.
It's so interesting. There's a really big part of me, and you're kind of speaking to it in an indirect way, that's really interested in this results versus effort
Mhm.
dynamic. And I have that installed in my mind that I will always speak to her effort instead of her results. Um, but what else? So, things you can control, and even, I don't know if you've crossed paths with his work, Ben Crow. He's actually based in Melbourne. He's really good. He did a lot of mindset work with tennis players. And he helps a lot of people in professional work come back to who they are as a person, not what they do, knowing that what they do, has its pros and cons, and especially as tennis, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but he's really fixated on who you are as a being, not who you are in your doing. And I can
Mhm.
kind of hear that in your message. What type of language would we consider in these first 12 months in particular? And what research do you have around, say the first 12 months compared to
Mhm.
the first 5 years? I feel like I heard something a while ago that, the accumulation effect of the first 12 months is bigger than, say, the 12-month mark to the 5 year mark in terms of that 4 year period. So do you have any research on that? And what's your understanding of what I can do as a father in this
Yes.
first 12 months?
So my research, and Chris and my husband's, we focused on toddler to tween, so not the first 12 months. And just in for anyone listening here whose children are older, We didn't really start to correct our parenting until we were well into the toddler preschool years, because it took us years to actually work out what was going on and what the problems were. And so I don't think of course, the early years are really important, but the brains are plastic. So we can correct our course at any time, right?
Good. Excellent. Good to hear.
Um, but absolutely. So when Frankie starts to crack it and have tantrums in public, for example, just getting back to that, teaching her to value herself for who she is rather than what she does and other people's perceptions is one of the ways that traditionally children have been disciplined and controlled is by the what will other people think shaming, right? And one of the reasons girls and boys too, but this is particularly true for girls, grow up insecure is in so many different ways. We teach them that other people's opinions of them and external measures like beauty define their worth in the world. We want our children to behave well because it accords with their own good values, not because what will other people think. And so you see people, like kids are throwing a tantrum in a cafe, and people will go, people are looking at you. You're embarrassing yourself, right? And so that's teaching them that I need to behave because people are judging me. And so the lesson that then they take into life is I can do whatever I want when there's no one around judging me, right? Whereas what you want your kid to do is we need to be quiet because we want to be considerate of other people. And, look, you will find out from yourself between the age of 1 and 4, it's probably not worth going to a cafe anyway, because you can't expect too much of your kids. But it's just that attitude that what will other people think discipline actually makes your children insecure, and it doesn't make them good people. It makes them sneaky.
I asked, have you ever crossed paths with Lael Stone? Do you know her work?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had her on the podcast, and my first question to her was always, as a kid growing up, I never understood, like, I don't know how this kind of locked in for me at such a young age, but I didn't understand truth in the way that my parents would tell me, to tell them the truth.
Yep.
And then when I did, I got in trouble and I got yelled at. And at some point, I locked in this sort of like, hey, this doesn't make sense. I might as well just kind of, to your point, kind of be sneaky and go about it a different way. So it's interesting that you're coming at the sneakiness from a different angle.
Yeah. So our advice is that we should never punish our children. So what I mean by punishment is deliberately inflicting physical or emotional pain to try to get them to behave differently next time. And so an extreme version of punishing is, hitting them. But a mistake people make, and we made this too with our first daughter, because this is presented as enlightened parenting, is the timeout, right? And, it's semi-scientific, for the age correlates to the number of minutes they have the timeout for. So if they're 2, they get a 2-minute timeout. And if they're 3, they get a 3-minute timeout. But when you give your child a timeout, that is punishment. So when they're sitting in the corner, first of all, if Frankie has chucked a block and smashed your favorite painting and you put her in a timeout, do you think she's going to be sitting in the corner reflecting on her behavior to make a different decision next time? No, she's going to be thinking one of 2 things. 1, I hate Dad. Or 2, which is even worse, I hate me. And when nothing good grows from shame. If we want our children to act well and be good people, we need to assume that they are good people. So instead of punishment, we talk about discipline. Now, discipline in its traditional sense means learning. That's why there are disciplines at university and disciplines in the Olympic Games, right? So every time your child behaves badly, it's an opportunity to support them to learn to make a different choice next time. And the research shows that helping them learn is far more effective than punishing. You will find as Frankie gets older, the parents who punish the most are always punishing the most, right? And so the
Mm.
only conclusion you can draw from that is that punishment doesn't work. Punishment makes you sneaky. Punishment makes you little Blake not wanting to tell the truth. And so now my daughter is 16, and I'm just seeing how important it is that we disciplined her rather than punished her. Because when she makes a mistake as a teenager, I want to be the first person she comes to, not the last. And in order to
Oh,
be
this is juicy.
the
This is so
first,
juicy.
so for us to be the first person our children come to, they have to trust that instead of inflicting either physical or emotional pain on them, we are going to support them to learn to do better next time and to also make amends for any mistake that they've made.
It's juicy. I already know that I'm gonna have to get you back on for a second chat. But anyway, let's stay focused for today. So I was disciplined a lot as a kid. And it's sorry, I was punished. That's a really interesting piece to distinguish. Thank you for bringing that to light. Um, and it didn't work.
No, it
It
doesn't
didn't
work.
work. There'd be people that question that, but I, as a product of that approach, can tell you that it didn't work, and I just became more of a problem child as a result of that. What I find really interesting is, and I'm glad Shani and I are on the same page, is ultimately I want Frankie, exactly as you said, to feel a level of safety and trust in the dynamic that we create, that she can come to us first and she can be, I don't know if rewarded's the right word, I'm interested in your thoughts, rewarded for the truth,
Yep.
as opposed to the way that I saw it, which was essentially I got rewarded if I didn't tell the truth, because if I told the truth, I was punished. So I'm always thinking, even at her age of 3 months, how do we create the safest environment so that she will be able to come to us with everything, um, and yeah, whether it's reward, if that's the right choice of words, but like that's ultimately what we're the school of thought that we have. So how have you done that? What have you
Yeah.
done
So
to create that safety?
we become a resource for them.
Mm,
Now, that doesn't mean that there are not boundaries. There absolutely needs to be boundaries. I'm not talking about permissive parenting. So when Frankie's 2, if you're not saying no multiple times a day, you are not giving her the boundaries that she needs, right?
mm,
So often it's a no, and then there's an explanation why. But because there is no shame in our parenting and there is no punishment, our children trust us more to know that we're making the right decision for them, even if they don't like it at that time.
mm,
And the other thing is, it's not so much about discipline and punishment, but it's just an overall approach to parenting. Is we talk about 2 types of parenting: stone parents and seed parents. Traditional parents are the stone parents, and there's a lot of pressure on parents to be this. And this is the idea where we have a preconceived notion of the perfect child. And we think that if we get out our chisels and we chip away and we create this perfect child, then they will go on to have a good life. But the problem with that is that if a child is really going to like themselves, and everything that you want, your hope and dream for Frankie, becomes easier if she likes herself. She has to be able to grow into the best version of the person that she chooses to be, not the person that you choose for her, no matter how well intended. So, by contrast, a seed parent is someone who looks at their child as this precious, beautiful, unique seed. You don't know how she's going to grow and bloom. You don't know yet what her strengths and weaknesses are. You don't know what her preferences are. You don't know what her timeline is. But that's not your job. Your job is to create the environment for her to grow and flourish. And that is the love, that is the boundaries, that is the support. And then she can grow up to be the person that she wants to be, the best version of herself. And so if you accept your child for who they are, they will want to come to you. The kids who reject their parents are the ones who feel like their parents don't actually like them for who they are. And this can be really hard for parents because we all have a vision of what our children are going to be. And sometimes they pop out and they are totally different from what we thought. Maybe you wanted an academic child and she's not. Maybe you wanted a sporty one and she's not. Maybe you wanted a shy one and she's forthright or whatever, right? There is often in parenting that is not talked about a necessary grieving process. We need to grieve for the child we didn't get. We need to do that work so then we can love and adore the child that we have rather than the one we thought we were going to get.
Do you know the work of Carl Jung? Have you ever heard of?
Yes. Yeah.
So what you talk about really landed for me maybe 12 to 18 months before Frankie came. And one of his quotes, this isn't word for word, but it's something along the lines of the heaviest burden a child will carry is the unmet needs of the parent.
Yes.
And I think about that a lot. Like the amount of parents that consciously or unconsciously, I'm guessing a lot of it's unconscious, live vicariously through their son, their daughter, and try, to your point, try to nudge them in a certain direction. So that's been a really profound piece for me of honoring the little girl that is in front of me in every moment, as opposed to, exactly as you said, trying to chisel her into going and playing WAFL because I never made it as an AFL player.
Yes, that's right. And it actually, once you go through that grieving and have that realization, it actually makes parenting so much more fun because it takes the pressure off. You don't need to worry if your kid's going to be a doctor. That's not your decision, it's theirs. And so, one of the no-brainer of parenting, so many problems that we create with between us and our children comes down to this. What our children need more than anything is what we need. And we all want. We all want to be loved, valued, and seen for who we are in this moment. We don't want to have to get an A on our test to feel like you love us. We don't want to have to win a race to be okay. We don't want to have to hang out with the popular kids to make mum and dad proud or lose weight or whatever. We want to be enough right now. And if you create a home where your daughter is enough right now, then you will minimize the risk of dangerous, rebellious behavior. Because if she has acceptance at home, she is not going to chase it so hard outside of the home.
I know every parent, I shouldn't say I know, I assume every parent has the best intention for their kids.
Of course, I've never met one that doesn't.
Cool. All right, so we're on the same page. What I do find really interesting is, to that Carl Jung quote, and it'd be interesting in your 10 years of research, do you think parents consciously or unconsciously are wanting their kids to be a certain way because it's somewhat reflective of them, whether they're a high achiever, whether they, do you know what I mean? Like, do you find that a very common thing? I'm guessing it's not a conscious thing for a lot of parents, but like, here's a good boy, here's a good girl, and that's reflective of me, whether it's me as a person, me as part of my parenting style. Do you see a lot of that?
Yeah, and I mean, it's both. It's both extremes. There's the mini me, right? Where we want them to be like us. And then there's the don't be anything like me. Like the kid, and this again with the very best of intentions, I see it now with parents who didn't go to university. And they are tightening the screws so hard on their kids to get the score to get into law or medicine or whatever, right? Completely oblivious to the fact that that might not be the right decision for their child. So the thing about parenting is, unless we step back and really think about it and upskill, that's another important thing. Parenting is a skill. And often, Blake, I'm so pleased to be talking to you because often it's the mums who develop their skills. It's the mums who buy the parenting books. It's the mums who go to the mothers groups. It's the mums, like every week I'm talking to another mum and we are working on our skills, right? Whereas often I mean, some dads do, and it is wonderful, right? But often dads don't. Like, and that's not my prejudice. The research shows that, when you look at who buys parenting books, it's not dads, right?
Mm.
But so if we work on our skills and then look at parenting consciously, then we can choose for ourselves how many parenting approaches that were done to us do we want to then pass on to our children. And
It's
sometimes we can't drop all the baggage that we have.
mm.
We can choose not to unpack it in front of our kids.
Yeah, I think about this a lot in terms of the language that you used before around kind of punishment versus discipline. And I can only assume that a large portion of punishment, I'm interested in your research, is a byproduct of a lot of parents who haven't done the work and also haven't regulated their nervous system. And because of that, they come out with a unconscious reaction as opposed to a very conscious, grounded response, and therefore a disciplined approach. Is that what you found in
Yeah,
your
look, there's
research?
three things there. One is absolutely that. And look,
Mm,
I tell you, you will find this out for yourself. No one can push your buttons like your kid can. And there are
mm.
times where we all lose our shit, right?
Yep,
You know,
I
that
get it.
that's just it, right? But you don't have to get it right all the time. Yeah.
Mm,
And when you do lose it, there is an opportunity to model apologizing and making amends, right?
mm,
The second one is there, particularly with boys, there is an idea that boys are born wrong and that we make a good man by breaking them down first. And so punishment is a much bigger problem in raising boys than it is with raising girls. And we can absolutely crush our little boys by being too hard on them and expecting too much from them. And then the third thing is, and this is particularly the case for mothers, there is so much social pressure on us to be good mothers. I have never felt so judged in my whole life than I did when I became a mother. Like everyone is watching every single decision that you make and judging it. And so then that can force you to try to get immediate compliance rather than teaching long-term behavioral lessons.
All right, we're going deep here now. You've really opened the next can for me. So I obviously pre-parenting had no idea that this would be the case. But I am notorious for kind of speaking about some controversial topics and some taboo topics. Sexuality, vaccines, the hot topics. And nothing has blown up my inbox like me talking about parenting.
Right, yeah.
Is it because everyone's a parent that everyone's got an opinion? Why is it such a wild space, do you think?
Because we all are so invested
Mm,
in being the best parents we can. We all feel out of our depth. And when we're insecure, we hit out, right? To try and justify our own decisions.
it makes a lot of sense. All right, the next question for you. You've been in the space 16 odd years. So
Yep.
again, I'll be fascinated to get your opinion in that 16-year period. But one of the things I noticed pre-kids, which probably would never put me off, but it also put a lot of doubt in my mind and has put some friends off, albeit we've had conversations with them since we had Frankie. Why is it such a negative space? And why, if someone's having a positive experience, do they almost have to be quiet about their positive experience?
Like
And
when I
is this normal? Because I'm like, we're fucking loving it. And I'm like, oh, is this not socially acceptable to talk about a good experience? That's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, it's a bit like marriage too, isn't it? When everyone goes, marriage is such hard work. I think, oh, is it? I really like being married.
Mm,
It's the same thing because parenting can be really hard. And so then when someone is absolutely loving it and cruising, it makes you feel inadequate, doesn't it? And I think that, yeah, that's something that I consciously try to move past
mm.
because I tell you, my mum friends, when every mother and probably every father too, there are times when are just are so low and your resources, you're so depleted. In those times, it has been my mum friends who have gently taken my hand and guided me back from the edge of the cliff, right? So we really need that village.
Mm.
And I think all of us, if we all make a conscious choice to support another parent rather than judge another parent, and we have to make it consciously because we are conditioned to be really judgmental. If you consciously make that choice, then that is better for everyone.
I find it fascinating. It's really interesting, and it's almost like a lot has gone unspoken, but we just sense, um, with good reason. I understand. I've got empathy and compassion for those that have, been challenged, and at some stage, it sounds like everyone kind of gets challenged.
Yeah.
Um, as someone who's heavily researched, I'm wondering if you see this a bit. For us, it's almost like those that haven't had kids yet are really enjoying our positive parenting story because they're like, holy fuck, this is nice. It's like 1 in 100 that we see that's positive.
Yes.
And then potentially because we are enjoying it, similar to your story about marriage,
Yeah.
it becomes quite polarizing for those that might have had a more challenging time. I mean, I don't want to kind of speak to what appears to be obvious, but shouldn't there be a level of self-responsibility for something that triggers you? And I have empathy and compassion for everyone that does it tough because
Yeah.
everyone does do it at some stage. But does that not become a little bit of kind of self-responsibility of like, oh, I notice they're enjoying themselves. That's quite triggering for me. And then you kind of explore your co-creation of that dynamic?
I think so. In
Mm.
an ideal world.
Yeah,
I think,
ideal.
parents' buckets are empty.
Mm.
Often, like if you have a child that hasn't slept in a year, like,
I'd be pissed. I'd be real
yeah,
pissed.
well, I mean, that actually happened to me. I was hospitalized because I thought there was a rat epidemic. I thought there were a plague of rats everywhere. And it wasn't. I was hallucinating because I hadn't slept in a year because my daughter woke every hour. So I
Really?
really was one of those people who I was not in a position to do any personal development at
Yeah.
that time.
Mm. So talk to me about personal development, because I guess for context, that's my work. I've been deep in it, and I think
Yep.
probably up to this point somewhere around kind of 250 therapy sessions, 35 kind of psychedelic journeys. And for me, it'd be interesting to see what work still needs to be done,
Yep.
as she kind of brings to light more wounds, more blind spots, more
Yep.
limiting beliefs, etc. But in my eyes, this is the most obvious equation of your son or daughter will be your biggest trigger. And for that reason, they'll also be your biggest teacher. And for that reason, there's endless opportunities for growth, healing, expansion within the work of parenting. Based on the amount of research that you've done, is it a lack of awareness around the work? Is it a lack of ownership? Probably a combination of both. But what's your assessment of what is a big personal growth journey?
Yeah, I think it's because when it's like the fish swimming in water, like when you're in it, it's really hard to see it. And so let me take one example that seems so obvious to me, but yet is so controversial because our values around it are so deep. And I didn't realize I was saying the most controversial thing I've ever said until it came out of my mouth and I was on the front page of the Daily Mail in the UK.
That's a
And
rough place to be, the Daily Mail.
yes. And still, like if you look at my social media feed, anytime I say anything about this subject, it absolutely goes off. And it is the idea that we should not force children to give affection if they don't want to.
Oh my God, I love this.
Now, it applies to both girls and boys, but it is mostly for girls because so when we say to a boy, go and kiss granny, and he goes, nut, and he runs off, that's funny. A girl cannot do that. And so my argument is that body autonomy starts in the home. And so if a child wants to kiss grandma, if she wants to give uncle a hug because he gave her a present, that is beautiful. But if she doesn't, and you force her to, you are teaching her that she does not own her body. You are teaching her that somebody else's comfort, somebody else not getting embarrassed, somebody else's pleasure because they want a hug is more important than what she wants to do with her body.
Oh
And
my God, I love this.
this can have serious long-term consequences. So I have interviewed girls who give oral sex, teenage girls. They're from the two of the most elite private schools in Melbourne. And all of them, 14-year-old girls, have given oral sex. And I've said to them, did you want to do it? No. Did you like it? No. So why did you do it? And they said, because I didn't know that I had a choice. That's just what girls do. And I said to the girls, do you know you don't have to do that? And one of them burst into tears and said, no, nobody ever told me that. And why would they know that? Because they've been taught their whole life that not embarrassing someone else is more important than them honoring their own boundaries. And then when we look at girls, the research of girls who send nude photos, some of them want to send them, good on them, right? If they make that decision knowing full well the consequences, their body, right. The vast majority of them, the vast majority of girls who send nude photos don't want to send them. Why do they send them? Because they don't want to upset him, don't want to hurt his feelings, didn't know they had a choice. And people say that is such a long bow from kissing grandma to sending a nude. And my argument is it? It's exactly the same lesson. And if you want your girl to be able to say no to unwanted sexual advances, if you want her to not send that nude if she doesn't want to, if you want her to not feel like she has to give oral sex to a boy because he'll get upset or say he'll kill himself if she doesn't, because that's a thing too, then you need to teach her that in the home. And one thing that dads can do that is such an important lesson is tickling games. Because what happens typically when dads are rough and tumbling playing with daughters and tickling her and she goes, no, 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 and dad keeps going, what dad is teaching her that it is normal to overpower her and that's okay. But if she says no, even if she's laughing and you stop and you say, I'm saying no because you said so, and when you say no, people have to stop, you're teaching her a lesson. You're planting that seed that will be there when she's 16.
I love this. I don't know if you've got any research on this, but I've had this this thought. Because even when I see from a place of curiosity, not judgment,
Mm-hmm.
even when I see families trying to force their young kids to look at a camera for a photo, look, and there's this force. I'm like, because down the track, I feel like you're going to want your daughter or your son, daughter in this case, to be able to say no, to be able to have boundaries, etc. And here you are essentially trying to break her boundaries when she says no, or she's not looking at the camera, so to speak. Would you put that, does that seem a bit extreme, or would you put that
No,
into the same
it's the
category?
same thing. So
Yeah.
one of the reasons, and I tackle this in my Goodbye Good Girl book as an adult woman, one of the reasons women struggle so hard to find their self-worth is because they have been taught in all these different micro moments that they're only valuable if they please someone else, if they do something that someone else wants. And if they don't do what they want, they are not lovable. And so another really good parenting hack, it's a rule, and we have a rule about anything to do with our daughter's appearance. If it's not permanent and it's not harmful, she gets to decide. So whatever she wants to wear, if she wants to wear the most hideous dress to visit grandma, she gets to decide. If she wants to smear her face with your partner's makeup, she gets to decide, unless your partner doesn't want that makeup,
It's expensive makeup.
wants to cut her hair, she gets to decide, right? And the reason we have that rule is that if you don't teach her as a child that she gets to decide what she does with her body, she will grow up thinking that she has to do what the friend says, what the frenemy says, what the boyfriend says, what the advertising industry says. But here's the really important part of that. You have to support her decision, especially if you don't agree. And so when my daughter wears something that I don't like and she says, do you like it? I'll say, no, I don't really, but it's your body, so you get to decide. It's not my decision. when my daughter wanted to get a second ear piercing, and I don't really like it. And she says, "Do you like it?" It's like, "No, but it's not permanent, because the hole will grow back. It's not harmful because she's old enough to look after herself. You get to decide." And so this is often a really hard one for dads because traditionally dads are socialized to control their daughters' bodies. There's the line, "You're not going out of the house looking like that." And that's presented as good parenting. But what dads are doing, they're policing their daughters' bodies. And underneath that, the bit that we don't like to talk about is the assumption that if she goes out of the house wearing skimpy clothing, she is inviting sexual harassment and sexual assault. Now, let's talk about the research here. Any woman knows that you can be wearing a paper bag and you can get sexually assaulted, right? It is irrelevant what your daughter is wearing. What the research shows is the girls that are most likely to be sexually harassed and sexually assaulted are not the ones wearing skimpy clothing. They are the vulnerable ones. They're the ones who are the easy target. And how does your daughter become vulnerable? By not being empowered to own her own body, right? So every time you tell your daughter you can't wear that, you are stripping her of her power. You are making her more vulnerable. So what you want in your daughter is to create "don't fuck with me" vibes, right? And how do you create them? By honoring her boundaries, by encouraging her to make decisions about her body and supporting her, even if you don't like it. So she knows that she can enforce her boundaries and she's still loved.
I've got a question that I've sat with for 20 years. And because you've got a 16-year-old daughter, you again are the perfect person to answer this. And it may be controversial. So if you feel the need to shut it down, you're welcome.
Okay.
So I didn't do drugs really, as I still don't really, unless it's psychedelics. But I didn't really do drugs, but I was surrounded by a lot of, 16 to 30, you're kind of surrounded by it, and drinking, etc. For you, knowing that you want the safety of your daughter, if you knew that she was going to do drugs or experiment, etc., in whatever context, would you invite her and potentially some of her friends to do it in the comfort and safety of your home, which might seem controversial to other parents because they're like, you're endorsing it?
Yeah.
My belief is that you wouldn't be endorsing it. You're just providing a safe environment. How would you navigate a situation like that as someone who's a lot more educated and well-versed and researched than me on this topic?
Well, so, just going back, because it got complicated when you said "and her friends," because my view
True.
is so, and I will answer your question, but just on the issue of "and her friends." So we're dealing with this issue with alcohol at the moment. At 16, kids are starting to drink alcohol. The research shows that parents should not be supplying alcohol. If you supply it, your child is more likely to be a binge drinker and then go on to have a drinking problem, right?
Interesting.
And so my view is, if you want to let your kid drink, that's your decision. But you have no right to supply alcohol to my child or anyone else's child.
Yeah.
Right? You do you and your parenting, but that crosses a line, right? But having said that, it's completely normal for kids to experiment. But part of that is the rebellion. If you're supplying it to them, you are denying them the necessary developmental step of rebelling, right? When it comes to drugs, what I've said to my daughter is, I don't want you to do them. And we've talked about the harm, because we're very open about all of this and we've been having these conversations for years. But if you are going to do drugs, I want to test them first.
That's really cool. You know what's really interesting? I want to go into that in a sec. You really challenged me there for a moment with my relationship with rebellion, because I would consider myself probably the more extreme end of rebellion. But your language was the necessary need for rebellion, which really challenged me, because I have somewhat of a negative association to rebellion, albeit I've seen where it works for me, and definitely numerous spots where it worked against me. But that's a really interesting take that I'd never really considered. How do you see it as a necessary need?
Well, it's part of becoming an adult. It's part of separating yourself from your parents. And rebellion's going to happen. And I think that it's better to happen within the season that it's supposed to happen. So I think that when we look at a lot of kids who are failing to launch, overprotected children, they haven't been allowed to separate themselves from their parents. And so that's why, opening that communication their whole lives, not punishing them, their whole lives. So they come to you first. So we talk about things first, is you can make them safer in their rebellion.
So interesting. So for I actually haven't looked up the meaning, the dictionary meaning of rebellion. When you say that, my mind goes to supporting independence as opposed to rebelling. And maybe it's just my association to rebellion, but it feels like independence is a sense of freedom,
Mhm.
whereas rebellion feels like a sense of pushing back on
Yeah.
authority, etc. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting because I definitely have a negative association to the word rebellion. When I think of what you just said, I'm like, oh, that's independence. But it's interesting that you associate it with rebelling.
Well, your children can't go through life feeling like they have to please you all the time.
Mm.
And part of that is breaking rules, isn't it? And
I did it
then
well.
learning the consequences for that. But it's better for them to do it when they're 16 instead of 30.
Mm. Yeah, I wish I learned those lessons earlier.
Yeah.
So, so how does a conversation play out in your home when your eldest, or
Yeah.
you've got two, don't you?
Yeah. So Violet is 16 and Ivy is 11.
All right. So when Violet breaks the rules, what's the format? Is it both parents? Is it one or the other? Do you handle it then and there, or do you wait till you've grounded yourself next? Like, I know it's a random question, but talk me through your process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she doesn't break many rules. And I think the reason is because we give her a lot of freedom,
Mm.
but we have really high expectations. We are not permissive parents. So um, she's always been allowed to wear what she wants, right? A lot of her friends are not. Like they're totally controlled in what they wear. And what they do is so their parents make them wear long school uniform dresses to school. So what they do is they leave the house in that and then they get changed at the train station into their short one and wear it to school. So Violet doesn't need to break that rule
Do
because
you know much? Do you know much about shadow work?
no.
Okay, I'll give this to me rings true of shadow work. So we all have, and it's really good for your book, Good Girls. So we all have a persona, an ego, and identity that we show the world. Often the good girl, and the shadow is the denied parts of ourselves that we push down. So if we're the good girl, the opposite might be quote unquote the slut or whatever.
Yeah.
The more you suppress that part, and this is why I find this so interesting in my own experience. The more you suppress that part, the more risk you run of that showing up in dysfunctional, disorientated, or distorted ways. So the push and suppress the other parts of myself that are deemed inappropriate by society, whether it's when they're 16 or at some stage, it's likely to come up, and it's likely to come up in a dysfunctional way, which is essentially what you've been talking about the whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so and going back to that point that I also said, if you totally accept your child for who they are, they're they're not going to do really risky things to
Yeah.
find acceptance outside of the home because they've already got it.
Mm.
And that you can counsel them and talk through their decisions before they make a lot of them because you're their trusted advisor.
Kasey, this is like, I want to get you back on. I hope you're okay with that. This has been excellent, excellent. And I was talking to Shani about it last night. I was talking about you coming on, and I'm like, okay, I reckon somewhere between like 10 and 15 podcast episodes I want to do every year along this journey with Frankie. With whatever's relevant at that time. Obviously, we're in the newborn stage in the first year, but this is really like got me thinking and just given me some real insights, and hopefully, not just from a selfish point of view, hopefully lots of the listeners get these insights as well. So for those that want to find out more about you and the work that you do, where's the best spot to send them?
You can find me on Instagram at Kasey Edwards Writer or my website, kaseyedwards.com.
Beautiful. Kasey, so good to talk.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Blake.